Hello, my name is Rachel, and today I'm bringing you my January wrap-up. January was super crazy. It seems so long, but so hectic, and I am so happy it's over. I'm very much looking forward to February. I think it's going to be a much calmer and just a much happier month in general. So, I did manage to get 6 books read in the month of January, which, considering everything that went down, I am more than happy with. So let's run through the books really quick. First, I read Super Chill by Adam Ellis. This is a graphic novel, and it was so funny. This reminded me so much of the Sarah Anderson, Sarah Scribbles cartoons. They're just so realistic, they're very relatable, and they're so funny. I follow him on Twitter and on Instagram and see a lot of these that were in the book published often, and they're still so funny. I highly recommend it. Super funny. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I read a book about Carey Price by Catherine Rodina. This is a biography about Carey Price, who is the goaltender for the Montreal Canadiens and kind of Canada's beloved goaltender. He is often their goaltender when they are competing against the world. And this book had a subtitle that I don't remember, but it hinted at the fact that Carey Price was a First Nations child, which is kind of like an Aboriginal from Australia or like a Native American from the United States. It's the indigenous people there. And I really had no idea about that. And I found that to be the most interesting part of the story, honestly. And as his career progresses, his mom ends up being the first female chief of the tribe, and I thought that was such a cool little tidbit to add in. But basically, this is just a young adult biography of Carey Price, the goaltender, of how he started playing hockey in the frozen lakes in his backyard in Canada, and then progressed into the junior hockey league, and now into the NHL. And like I said, I thought the indigenous part was very cool because I actually didn't even know what I would never have been able to tell you that indigenous people in Canada were called First Nations. Even though I live, not that far from Canada, just a little bit, just the next country down. But I thought that was really interesting. Overall, though, I gave it 3 out of 5. I thought it was okay, but that part was super interesting. This would be a great high-low book for middle school and high school students. The sentence structure was very short and sweet, but it didn't seem too augmented. It didn't seem too sharp and too short, but it was easy to follow, very easy to read, and I think it would be high interest because it's a hockey player that's playing currently in the NHL. Again, I thought it was okay. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Next up, I read Flower Kingdom. This is the 4th book in the Cucumber Quest graphic novel series by GGDG, and I think these are they're full of beautiful artwork, and I just like that they seem to be more geared towards girls. I feel like so many comic books and graphic novels are not geared towards girls, and I feel like a lot of girls don't feel like they're very accessible. So I like that we're seeing some that are geared more towards at least being accessible for females, because I really don't think it's a girl book, but I think it's so much more accessible for girls than some graphic novels that have been published before. And basically, we're following this ragtag group through the Cucumber Kingdom, and each one has a really funny name, like the Donut Kingdom, or in this case, the Flower Kingdom. And each one were in a different kingdom of the Cucumber series. So they're super fun. They're just really light. I feel like, I guess they're not, because they're fighting good and evil. It's kind of like, it reminds me a lot of a fairy tale. There's like menacing characters and then hero characters, and there's a struggle, but it's not like super horrible dark, like, people are being just horribly murdered. There is adventure, there is, the good and evil aspect, but it's easily accessible again. I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars, very much looking forward to reading some more of these. I think the reason I didn't enjoy this one as much as the first one is because I ended up reading this for a review group, so I had to skip ahead. I think if I read them in order, I would have liked this one much more. So I think that's what I'm going to do, is go back and start from the beginning and then read them in order. And I think that'll do the ticket. Next up is another book for my review group. I read A Stitch in Time by Daphne Kalmar. I read this for my 24 and 48 hour readathon, and This was a short little book, and I just had a hard time getting into it. I did like that it was set in Vermont. I feel like I don't read a lot of books that are set in Vermont. This was also set during, I think, the 20s, and our main character is very much of a tomboy. She hangs out with a lot of guys. She's living with her single widowed father, and her godfather lives down the street, and he is teaching her all about taxidermy, and she seems to know how to kind of take care of herself, and I do like that. But at the beginning of the story, her dad dies, and her aunts want to take her back to Boston with them after the grieving process, and she doesn't want to go. All of her friends and her life is there, so she's trying to get out of it, and eventually she runs away. But things don't turn out quite the way she wants them to, and I don't know. I don't know if it was too short or if I just never really fully got into it, but I thought this was okay, not fantastic. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I do think this would be very interesting to bring into like a history class when you're talking about the 20s. I feel like the only thing I ever think about is like flappers. So it was very interesting to see more of like a rural Vermont setting where it's not necessarily about flappers. You know what I mean? So that's really the only reason I am looking forward to putting it in the school libraries, because I think it gives a really needed perspective. Is it the best storyline? Maybe not, but interesting perspective. Next, for the 24 and 48 hour, I finally finished Stay Sexy and Don't Get Murdered, the definitive how-to guide by Karen Kilgariff and Georgia Hardstark. This is from the My Favorite Murder podcast, which you should definitely listen to if you have not. I do have to say, though, I have recently kind of become a little disenchanted with the podcast for like numerous reasons that we won't even get into now, but I was super excited when I heard there was going to be a book, but I knew going into it that it was either going to be, I feel like, a love it or hate it situation. I was either going to love it and then fall back in love with this podcast, or I was going to hate it and just be like, I think I'm done with it. So when I got an art copy, which I am so happy for, thank you, Macmillan, I jumped right into it, not knowing what to expect. And I absolutely, I just thought it was fantastic. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars, which is my highest rating of a book so far this year. And I am super excited to see the last few chapters, because I read a partial arc. So I'm super excited to see the last few chapters. I love how they incorporated catchphrases from the podcast. I like how it seemed to kind of harken back to when they started. It seemed a lot more real, a lot more accessible, and a lot more easy to connect with, I guess, because it's not about the murder. They're not sharing murder stories in this book so much as they're sharing their own stories. They're sharing kind of personal information and personal advice, I guess, but not in like a preachy, you should do this way. It's like, here's this, and this is why I feel this way. It's because I have this in my background. Does that make any sense? I don't know. But it was really, really good. I am super excited for the final book to come out, and I think this is bringing me back into the podcast now. I really, really enjoyed this book, and I think that just about every woman out there should read this book. It's really, really good. And it comes out in May, I believe, the final copy. And then last but not least, I read The Family Romanoff by Candace Fleming. And this I also read during the 24 and 48 hour readathon. I read this for our high school book club, but we got like snowed out all last week, so we didn't get to meet on it yet. But it was really, really good. It is about the family Romanov, the last emperor of Russia. And I mean, it's a nonfiction YA book, which are like my favorite nonfiction, because I mean, I feel like they're just concise and they're action-packed. This was very much in a narrative format. So we're following along as things deteriorate for the Romanov family, all the way up until their end. And if you're unfamiliar, they were assassinated at the end. Spoiler alert, but it was just so interesting. I guess I didn't realize how they transitioned from the ruling family of the Romanovs into Vladimir Lenin. I just didn't understand. I mean, I feel like this makes a lot of sense. I feel like I learned so much. I had no idea how Rasputin fell into all this, and it explains it all. I highly recommend this if you have any interest in Russian history at all. I just thought this was very mesmerizing, and I love how how it allowed you to be both kind of repulsed by this family and all the wealth they had, while the regular people of Russia were suffering so. But you also really feel for the family at the same time. Like, you got to feel all of the feelings, and I really, really enjoyed this one. I cannot wait to see what the kids think about it. I am so pumped. And then also, I did start The Hunger, which was on my TBR list for this month. Did not get it finished yet. I'm hoping to finish it at the beginning here of February, but that's going to happen. So hopefully you'll see that in next month's wrap up. So thank you so much. Definitely leave down below the titles of any of your favorite books from the month. I'm happy to hear them. Love recommendations. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you again in another video soon. Bye for now.